The TeachPitch podcast. We are very excited to be launching a series of interviews for TeachPitch, a global community of 50,000 subscribers from over 205 countries to date. And for these interviews, we have selected a number of subscribers who have achieved great things. And by great, I mean amazing. Think of former presidents, entrepreneurs, people who've built hospitals, huge non-profit organizations, successful journalists, doctors, etc. And what all our guests have in common is that despite their great success, they've encountered many enormous challenges. So what were these challenges and how did they overcome them? That's what we're going to be talking about here. My name is Aldo de Pap and I'm massively looking forward and very grateful you can join us on this journey. So sit back, relax and download the podcast here. What does it mean to be your brother's keeper?
Yeah, they told me that, but as a young nerd and who took things literally, I was thinking, I can't be my brother's keeper, particularly since they mean it so that we're all responsible for each other. Way I'm taking it now, it means that I have to hold myself responsible to get help to other people when that makes sense.
Yeah.
And that's why last year I donated, well, it's announced, I donated $25 million to fight hunger in America during the pandemic with a special focus on military families.
Mm-hmm.
So my deal is that I can't help out everyone, but I have given away so far, as I count it, about 50 to 60% of my net worth. So while I'm not a billionaire, I'm kind of doing the billionaire's pledge and better. I've given away half my net worth or more, but I'm doing it faster than the really rich people.
In this episode, my guest speaks about his journey as a very successful internet entrepreneur who through very good self-knowledge knew how to get out of the way, making room for a new CEO who made his company an even bigger success. We speak about how important it is to invest time and resources in communications and PR. And lastly, my guest for the first time reveals his thinking process around all the millions of dollars he has pledged and donated, and when this potentially could stop. Enjoy this interview with the founder of Craigslist, the one and only Craig Newmark.
We're so happy to be partnering with Hee Ha Ho, an interactive video platform that enables teachers and students to easily create amazing clickable videos for learning. Check out heehaho.com, that's HIHAHO.com, for more information and your free starter account. A big thank you to our friends at Zeus Maths Challenger, the only puzzle that effectively boosts your numeracy, critical thinking, and brain power. Go to CZeusPuzzles.com, that is spelled CZEUS puzzles.com, to get your brain buzzing. We are so excited to be working with the team Learning Ladders, the only platform that provides assessment that goes way beyond tracking to effectively support teaching and learning for EYFS, primary and secondary settings. Go to learningladders.info to find out more. My next guest has achieved what many tech entrepreneurs, myself included, can only dream of. In 1995, Craig Newmark started curating a list of San Francisco arts and technology events, which he personally emailed to friends and colleagues. People were soon calling it Craigslist, and when Newmark turned it into a company, he monetized it minimally, opting for a business model that prioritized doing well by doing good. Today, Craig's email list from the mid-90s has turned into a massive company with more than 5 billion ads that have been posted on the site, the vast majority for free. Even though Craig Newmark hasn't been involved in the day-to-day operations of Craigslist since the year 2000, he does appear to have continued his journey of making the internet a more safe and, above all, comprehensive place. In 2011, my guest founded Craig Connects, an organization to support the efforts of non-profit organizations who fight against global poverty. And in 2015, he set up Craig Newmark Philanthropies to advance people and grassroots organizations that are getting stuff done in areas that include trustworthy journalism and the information ecosystem, voter protection, women in technology, and veterans and military families. The trustworthy press is the immune system of democracy, Craig said in a recent interview with the Canadian Press Gazette in February of this year. Instead of limiting or stopping this spread of disinformation, I could see that frequently the press was being gamed into spreading disinformation. And so intuitively, I recognized that something was going very badly wrong, states Newmark. And that my guest was serious about attacking anything that causes such disinformation and chaos became clear when he started putting his money where his mouth is. To give a few examples, in June 2018, Newmark gave $20 million to the CUNY Graduate School of Journalism, which renamed itself as the Craig Newmark Graduate School of Journalism after the gift. In February 2019, Newmark gave another $10 million to Columbia Journalism School to launch a new Center for Journalism, Ethics and Security. Many other examples can be found where my guest visibly supports digital well-being, security, and above all, supporting the people who fight to protect the values that America aspires to: fairness, opportunity, and respect. Most importantly, Craig appears to be someone very grounded and very aware of what is going on around him. He's an avid bird watcher, and last but not least, he most certainly can very much appreciate dad jokes. Craig, a very warm welcome to you.
Hey, I feel great being here.
Thank you. Thank you. It's such an honor having you. And we just like to thank you very much for making some time available to talk to us. Craig, when I read about how you are attacking disinformation, it hit something very close to home for me, because this is also the reason why we started our platform in 2014. So TeachPitch initially wasn't meant as something focusing on disinformation, but more on information abundance, which is what we are trying to attack for those who we feel are safeguarding the most fragile in our society, specific on the level of education, which are teachers. So I was very inspired by that. Now, a lot of the projects that you support are making sure that people are not getting confused with any form of disinformation, alternative facts, or fake news. What, to your idea, has been most effective in attacking disinformation?
Well, so far, there haven't been enough effective methods in tackling disinformation. Mm-hmm. People are converging on solutions, and it appears to be, well, for news outlets and news aggregators, news distribution systems, the intent is to find ways to disrupt the flow of disinformation before that they could be broadcast by either disinformation super spreaders, mm-hmm. or before they could be broadcast by mainstream news. And
okay.
Sometimes mainstream news has bad intentions. It's there to disinform, but disinformation operators are professionals, and they're good at getting normally honest mainstream news sources to spread the disinformation on their behalf. Mm-hmm. So we need to disrupt the paths by which disinformation is propagated.
Yeah,
we need to go beyond that, but that's what I see so far as a prominent strategy which could work.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's very interesting. So you basically say the damage is being done before it hits mainstream. It's already
yes.
it's intentional when it happens in a smaller scale before it gets picked up by super spreaders. Yeah.
The deal is that bad actors try to get disinformation out to lots and lots of people to affect their actual behavior.
Yeah.
But if you identify the super spreaders on a social media platform, you can do things like downranking them. You can deplatform them. And basically what you're doing is getting them to stop lying.
Yeah.
And so if their whole business model is based on lying, then you may just have to find ways so that the lies don't get spread.
Yeah. So there's a lot in the news currently whereby there is a whistleblower at Facebook who basically says that Facebook isn't set up for effectively attacking disinformation, and that even to a certain extent they're playing along with this.
Yeah.
What would you say? Yeah.
Well, the whistleblower has shown that Facebook knows who a lot of the bad guys are.
Mm-hmm.
Facebook knows how to limit their reach, how to render them much less effective. But for reasons unknown, Facebook is just refusing to do that. Mm-hmm. So Facebook could do the right thing, but is refusing to do that.
Mm-hmm.
On the other hand, there are a lot of people in Facebook who want to do the right thing. My approach is to do what I can to encourage people who want to do the right thing without getting them into internal trouble.
Yeah.
Because Facebook, sometimes people who want to do the right thing and who can talk about it effectively find themselves looking for employment elsewhere.
Yeah. I know this is a problem a lot bigger than you and me, and we're not going to kind of find any concrete answers. But I would just like to go back to the entire idea of disinformation and fake news in its concept. Why are people out to spread misinformation? I from the human angle, I can't always get my head around that. And I know this is, but this is kind of such a weird thing that people would be willing to do this.
Yeah, the domestic purveyors of disinformation want to acquire power and money. Mm-hmm. They can effectively damage their opponents' campaigns by lying about them. Mm-hmm. The swift boating of John Kerry was the best example of that, going back about 15 years or so. Mm-hmm. People lied about his military service, and that meant he wasn't president. Mm-hmm. The people who purvey domestic disinformation often work with our foreign adversaries. Often their objective is based on their national strategy. Mm-hmm. It's commonplace to observe that what the Russians want to do is they're out conducting military-style disinformation, trying to weaken our country, possibly to get it to collapse. And they've made substantial inroads among people who sometimes call themselves conservatives but aren't. Mm-hmm. Then the Chinese are also involved in disinformation or cybersecurity operations, but they want to weaken us, but they don't want us to burn down because we're a big market. Mm-hmm. So in a sense, the difference between Russian and Chinese operations, the Russians really want to hurt us, mm-hmm. and the Chinese just want to disadvantage us so they can make more money.
Yeah.
But the actions of the domestic disinformation operators, their goals are not the same as our foreign adversaries, but they're way too close.
Mm-hmm. Wow, yeah, that it's so good that you're making an effort to support those who are attacking disinformation and who make sure that everything is safe and that we get the right information fed to us. You appear to believe also a lot in the individual integrity. And you said it before, for people doing the right thing. I think that's very admirable, and you're definitely someone who puts his money where his mouth is, so to say, in supporting journalists. But how do you know that people are going to do the right thing? Because it sounds like a very fragile thing.
Well, there's two parts. You can do the right thing yourself, mm-hmm. and then you can work with other people who you take a look at, maybe vet, and then you may decide to trust them or not. Mm-hmm. But in my case, I spread around whatever resources I have. Those resources are things like contributions or influence. For example, I nudge a lot of other people in my networks to better support different people who I think will do a good job. Mm-hmm. The idea is people of goodwill need to support each other, and I can nudge a lot of people in those directions, relatively subtle, at least for me. I'm not very subtle, but, mm-hmm. and this seems to be working if applied over a period of years. I'm finding that that's been my approach over the last 20 or 30 years. Mm-hmm. This is to say, any success I've had over 20 to 30 years, both Craigslist and Philanthropy, has been that I've accidentally been in the right place at the right time. Yeah. And in my attempt at simulating human social skills, I've managed to create long-lasting networks and relationships. And all this works together, which in ways that have made Craigslist successful and apparently has made my philanthropy start to be successful. This all makes me the Forrest Gump of the internet.
Yeah.
Because my luck, I guess, has all been a series of smart accidents.
Yeah. Well, you're being very, very modest, and you're not simulating any social skills at all. So, I mean, it's all credit to you. You wouldn't be the first person who's been successful who attributes a lot of it to luck. That's a very courteous and great thing to do. But I also think there's perseverance and kind of, some goal-getter mentality in there as well. Otherwise, it wouldn't happen. Luck is an important ingredient, but not the only ingredient, I'd say.
Yeah, I think again, you're maybe giving me too much credit, possibly because you don't see how hard I work to simulate social skills.
Okay. Yeah, okay. Well, you're doing a great job at simulating them. Okay. Let's dive into your challenges. As a first challenge, you've written knowing when to get out of the way. I thought that was such an interesting one. Yeah. What does that mean?
Well, sometimes you're the right person for the job, like in my case, creating Craigslist. But then I realized I wasn't right to keep it going, so I got out of the way there.
Yeah.
Now I'm doing a great deal of work in things like disinformation, support for vets, countering harassment, and I'm starting things, but I'm not the right person to keep them going forward, because a lot of the work I describe requires convening the people who will get the job done, and convening skills are social skills. And like, have you met me? An exception I may make is that as I get more and more into the cybersecurity world, I may be more directly involved than in other areas. That's because I know something about cybersecurity, and in my declining years, I'm seeking for some area where I can delude myself into thinking that I'm technical again. And I'm hoping people will indulge my delusions.
Yeah. Well, I think they most certainly are. But I'm sure that if I were to ask them, they wouldn't say that it's a delusion, but that you're actually good at it. The thing that I wonder, because I read about, of course, your path at Craigslist, is that very early on, you knew that you wouldn't be the most suitable CEO. And I think that's so admirable that you said, I'm moving out of the way to give room to another CEO. Didn't that hurt at some point, or wasn't that because it was your baby, right?
Well, that's exactly it. I did have a twinge at like giving my baby up for adoption. Yeah. But it was the right thing to do, and it's worked out.
Yeah. No, most definitely. It's just that it feels like, it would, to me, it feels like it's the last thing that would come up in my mind. And I think it's very good that you kind of said like, okay, let's do this because it's the right thing and obviously that's paid off. Yeah. Yeah, most certainly. As your second challenge, Craig, you've written down understanding the importance of communications and public relations. What do you mean by that?
Well, something which Valerie Jarrett tried to teach me in 2009. She brought me over to the White House, the West Wing, probably on Obama's inspiration, because she thought she needed me to understand that no good deed goes unpunished, or more precisely, doing the right thing isn't enough unless you communicate about it well. And I didn't take that lesson seriously when I heard her, but it did sink in over a period of 2 to 3 years. And for someone who's a stubborn engineer type, 2 or 3 years, maybe that's pretty good. But the lesson for everyone, the lesson for everyone is that doing the right thing may not matter at all unless you communicate effectively to people that it is the right thing. Because if you don't do that, bad actors may turn it around to make it look like a bad thing. And the people who do that are professionals, and they're really good at lying. And someone like me just can't deal with them. Either I start off with a strong position or I'm screwed. And I can also imagine it's very overwhelming because, again, going back to what you said about disinformation, it happens before it hits mainstream media. So people are so intentional in getting something about you out there. And then
and then it just starts living a life of its own. So I can imagine that's a difficult process.
We are very happy and excited to be partnering with Mindstone for the recording of this episode. Mindstone is a platform that lets you build courses curated from the best articles, podcasts, and videos available online, helping your students learn faster and remember more. You can think of Mindstone and learning in the same way you think of Spotify and listening. With Mindstone, you can use the internet as an infinite library of content that you can curate into playlists with tailored recommendations, and it's shareable with your students. Where Spotify enhances the listening experience, Mindstone exists to enhance the learning experience. Check out mindstone.com and find out how you can get started.
I'd say the vast majority of technical people, maybe every technical person, is not prepared for this.
Yeah.
And it is traumatic.
Yeah, I can definitely imagine. Yeah, and so I know that, you've shared before that the trauma is real and there's no point in digging that up. But now in your kind of PR and communication strategy, could you give us an example of your intentionality? Is there something that you would do or would not do, and maybe something concrete? Yeah.
I'm not doing explicit comms or PR in that sense these days.
Okay.
The one exception that might be a part of that is that I do have a guy at Edelman PR. Mm-hmm. His job it is to prevent me from saying stupid things publicly.
Yeah. Okay.
And a lot of that stems from my sense of humor.
Yeah.
Because sometimes I'll think of something which is funny for me, is sometimes funny for people I speak with privately, and we all agree I should never make that joke publicly.
Yeah.
And so this guy, Eric, does help me avoid saying stupid things. And unfortunately means I have to filter out everything I say. There's other reasons where I'm required to filter because I'm operating under a bunch of confidentiality agreements and a bunch of non-disparagement agreements.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
So there are things that legally I can't say. And that's an enormous pain in my backside.
Yeah. So you need to be conscious because, at some point you're quite restrained because you're in so many other things, involved in so many other things. And then on top of that, it's a dad joke filter, so to say, to make sure that, which is a waste because dad jokes are good. I just want to have it known that I like dad jokes as well. So more power to you. Yeah. Craig, what do you think is the number one misconception that people have about you?
People think I'm smarter than I am, and I'm not.
Okay.
People think I've had some great strategy for disruption in the newspaper industry, and that's just not the case in two ways. One is I'm not that smart. The second way is that within the last 2 or 3 years, economists and industry analysis have figured out what happened in newspaper revenue. They go back to the 50s and 60s, and when you look at the real numbers, the disruption to newspapers was television news, and then much worse around 2008 or so. That's when Google and Facebook hit, and that's when they really started taking a lot of advertising from newspapers. The guy who's done the deep work, who's got the numbers and charts, that's Thomas Bechtel, a guy from Sweden.
Okay, so you kind of went with ideas from him.
Yes.
Yeah.
I have a lot of limitations. My ignorance is vast, but I now have access to a lot of smart people.
Yeah.
And they want to help.
Yeah.
So I'll take advantage of that.
Yeah. But it takes a clever person to recognize, the right people. So again, I think you're more emotionally intelligent than you think you are. But I'm not trying to persuade you. I'm just throwing it out there.
Sure. I think a better characterization of my work is that I'm aware enough of my ignorance that I'll ask for help.
Yeah. Yeah, that's well put. That's well put. And then we go to your last challenge, Craig. As your last challenge, you write down, what does it mean to be your brother's keeper?
Yeah. And this is a new thing for me because when I heard Mr. and Mrs. Levin talk about it in Sunday school, they told me that. But I, as a young nerd and who took things literally, I was thinking, I can't be my brother's keeper, particularly since they mean it so that we're all responsible for each other. Mm-hmm. That's too much work. Mm-hmm. Way I'm taking it now, looking for feedback, but it means that now and then I have to hold myself responsible to get help to other people when that makes sense.
Yeah.
And that's why last year I donated, well, it's announced, I donated $25 million to fight hunger in America during the pandemic with a special focus on military families. Mm-hmm. So my deal is that I can't help out everyone, but I can stretch and help out a lot of people. Yeah. So that's my current thinking. Yeah. I have to think about it some more.
Yeah. Thank you so much for vocalizing that and for putting that out there. And I can imagine as well that sometimes it feels like you need to take care of everyone because you're in luck financially and can give these donations, which are, let's face it, very big, and that a lot of people might knock on your door. So are you?
Oh, yeah. It's happening.
Yeah.
But I have given away so far, as I count it, about 50 to 60% of my net worth.
Yeah.
So while I'm not a billionaire, I'm kind of doing the billionaire's pledge and better. I've given away half my net worth or more, but I'm doing it faster than the really rich people.
Yeah. And, with your challenge, you're basically saying, it's not endless. You cannot continue. So at a certain point, it's going to come to a halt, if I'm correct.
Yeah. I just got to do what feels right.
Yeah.
And follow through and then just not stop doing it.
Yeah.
I'll be doing it very actively for the next 20 years.
Yeah.
And then I plan to be very active for the next 200 years, figuring out a way to do that, but it'll be a little tricky.
Yeah. Thanks so much for sharing all these things, Craig. And for what it's worth, I think you're doing amazing work. And again, I'll say it again, you're really putting your money where your mouth is. And you're really helping a lot of people. And your quest of spreading the truth is admirable, or helping other people to spread the truth is really great. My two very last questions, Craig, because I'm conscious of your time. And I ask all my guests. The first question has to do with reading. I always ask my guests, if there's one book that you could recommend to our listeners, one book that has inspired you, that has really helped you with being who you are today, which book would that be?
Well, if we're going to go back very far, the science fiction novels Dune and the Foundation trilogy. More recently, it's been like cyberpunk work from Bruce Sterling, Neil Stephenson, William Gibson, a lot of folks like that. They really matter. Mm-hmm. It also includes work by Malka Older and Ada Palmer. Lots of good stuff there.
And why, if you don't mind me asking, why is science fiction so inspiring to you? What is in science fiction that kind of opens you up?
I guess my job has always been to help invent the future. Mm-hmm. And science, you read enough science fiction, and they explore many scenarios, good and bad, which can work, which can talk to you about inventing the future, and it's working out.
Okay. That's nice. That's very well put. It's kind of, it inspires you to invent the future in reality. Yeah. So that's very nice. Yeah. Okay. And just because you said Dune, have you seen the movie already, or do you have an intention to go watch it?
I have seen the movie.
Okay.
I've seen it on a big TV.
Okay.
I might regret that.
Okay.
Because perhaps I should have watched it on an IMAX.
Okay. So you loved it. Is that what you're saying?
It was really good.
Okay.
I'm waiting for part 2, which they've announced yesterday. Okay. Part 2 will be in 2 years.
Okay. Okay, well, stay tuned. I still have to watch it, but I'm very excited, and thank you for sharing your review.
Yeah.
And then the very last question, Craig. Now let's turn the tables. This is your podcast. So the Craig Newmark podcast. Who would you want to invite as one of your guests? And I can tell you that you were very high on my list, so I'm very happy to say mission achieved for talking to you. But who would be your guest?
Well, I'd like it to be Leonard Cohen, but he's not doing many interviews now since he passed 5 years ago.
Yeah.
But in a way, I would like to interview his music, including the song Democracy, the last stanza of which is my mission statement.
Okay.
And you can look at that yourself for the podcast, and that will matter.
Okay. So I was trying to tempt you to sing the last stanza, but I know I'm not going to be successful here.
You don't want me to sing anything, frankly. That would be bad.
Okay, well, Craig Newmark, thank you so much for sharing this. By the by, I just wanted to say that you wouldn't be our first guest who would like to change their own podcast into a seance, and because many people choose for guests who've already passed and who have inspired them greatly. So Leonard Cohen, we'll be sure to add him to the list, and his music.
I think you're right. We should make it a seance.
Seance, yeah. First of all, I would like to say I thank you again for saying yes to this interview, for inspiring all of us, for helping so many of us with spreading the truth out there, for really helping us invent the future. I hope to hear a lot more from you and of Craig Newmark Philanthropies, and come back anytime. Craig Newmark.
Okay. It's my pleasure, and thanks.
If you liked this episode of the Teach Pitch podcast, then it would mean the absolute world if you could share it with your friends and or give it a short review on your preferred podcast platform. The more you share your ideas about these interviews, the more people will find out about them. So do let us know what you think. We'd be very, very grateful.
Special thanks to Kevin MacLeod for our beautiful theme music, Le Grand Chase. This podcast was produced and edited by Natalie Piles. Project coordination by Inva Cheney.